Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett, coming at you after a long hiatus, the longest hiatus Robservations has ever been on. And I have to tell you, I've been to New York. I am now here in Portland, Oregon. And why am I here? Well, let me tell you why I'm here. I am here working with one of my oldest, dearest friends in the world, Dr. Michael D. Schertz, MD 18 Delta. And we were working on his show, Crisis Medicine. And what is crisis medicine, you may ask? Well, you're going to find out all about it. But first, let me give you a taste. Here is a trailer for what we've been doing.
I learned in Army Special Forces that all lessons are written in blood. I don't want you to have to relearn those lessons. My name is Mike Schertz. I'm a board-certified practicing emergency medicine physician in one of the busiest emergency departments in Oregon. I also have over 10 years as an Army Special Forces medic, specifically as an 18 Delta. That's actually where I was first introduced to most of this material. Law enforcement's currently taught in active shooter or active violent events to assertively make contact with the primary bad actors and stop the killing. Now with this information, you can also stop the dying. The tactical casualty care class largely involves casualty management in what we call care under fire or direct threat environment. Anyone who spends any time around firearms professionally or personally needs that material. Eventually, you're going to be around someone who gets shot. We know that law enforcement arrives at medical calls about 4 minutes before EMS. If you're a casualty at one of these events or simply there but uninjured, that first several minutes of care is going to have to be provided by you. Law enforcement is going to have their hands busy securing the scene and trying to keep everyone safe. One criticism I will make of my own material is that people have called it encyclopedic. It is. I agree with them. I want to teach you not just the what to do or the why to do it, but the how, and more specifically, the how best to do it. Now, with the information that you're learning, not only can law enforcement get in there to stop the killing, but now you have some ability to stop the dying.
Now, it wouldn't be a Robservation show, would it, if I didn't have a dog? And this is Aaliyah. And she's a German Shepherd. And she gets a treat just like Gilbert and Tallulah did. That is, of course, Mike's dog. And it's great to be here to have a dog to share with you. Now, I know a lot of you want to talk to me about the return of Han Solo. Not Han Solo in outer space, but the Han Solo. The one and only Han Solo. The Sun Kang Han Solo. There's going to be time to talk about that soon. But now, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring on our first guest, Dr. Michael Schertz, who I've known since elementary school. A man I've gone through, well, I really haven't gone to hell and back with him, but sometimes he might think I've put him through hell. But we used to copy videotapes together, and he loved the military since he was a kid. Now he's an emergency room doctor and a former Green Beret. Little different fare than what I normally have here on Robservations, but allow me to introduce the impresario behind Crisis Medicine, Dr. Michael Schertz. Give it up for Mike. A little golf clap, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, it's great to have you here on Robservations. You just have to look at the camera and talk. So why don't you tell the folks at home what we've been doing? First of all, give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. So I'm an emergency physician. I've done that for a little over 20 years here in Portland, where I work at one of the busiest hospitals here. I've got 20 years of experience as an EMS medical director. Prior to that, then I had 13 years Army Special Forces experience as a Special Forces medic. My training company, Crisis Medicine, teaches the management of casualties in high-risk environments. So think active shooter environments, Boston bombing, those kind of situations where it's not really typical day-to-day EMS first aid.
So really cheerful events that you want to find yourself caught in.
Yes. Everyone's looking forward to being in one of those events.
Now, what I thought was pretty cool about Crisis Medicine when you talked to me about it for the first time is that you're teaching, you don't have to be an EMT or a paramedic. You're
Correct.
teaching people from all walks of life how they can manage the care in the midst of an active violent event, and they can save lives.
Correct. What we've recognized is, from a standpoint, say, of significant bleeding, a significant artery injury can actually cause someone to bleed out, to bleed to death in less than 5 minutes. And even with an immediate 911 call with one of these events, EMS is not going to be there within 5 minutes. It's really going to be more kind of the 7 to 8 or longer time frame. So if some of these casualties are going to survive these events, they're going to have to be treated by the individuals that are there when the event happened. And the federal government actually has a term for that. They call them active bystanders. So one of the classes that I teach, the class we captured digitally this week that we're going to have online hopefully in a few weeks, is called an Essentials of Casualty Care class, to teach everyday private citizens with zero medical background how to do these skills that have the potential to save a life with a wounded casualty in one of these environments.
Now, what made you decide to do this? Like, you're already an ER doctor.
Sure.
And you're the father of a very rambunctious teenage girl. And you have a wife who's rides roughshod all over you. So what did you need to teach this class for?
You know, it's interesting. Army Special Forces, the Green Berets are not generally portrayed accurately in the media. The primary job of Army Special Forces is to be military advisors. So my job as a Special Forces medic was, one, to provide care to all the members of my Special Forces team, but also if we're going to deploy to another country and we're going to train their military and interact with their population, I have to do quite a bit of teaching. So when I became an emergency physician, I still do the emergency medicine piece of that, but I wasn't doing as much teaching, and I really like that aspect of it. One of the other things that I see is that a lot of the people that teach classes, they're just not that good at it. So what I learned in the Army under some fairly harsh tutelage is, if you can't affect learning in your students, then you're a pretty crappy teacher. And I didn't realize till after I got out of the military that apparently I was fairly good at it.
Now, how long did it take you to develop the curriculum? I mean, your class is,
Sure.
As you said, your class is encyclopedic.
Sure. Not the class we just captured this week, but my full, complete casualty care class is very encyclopedic. It's hard to say. It's kind of evolved over the last 30 years. So it's, when I put the slide deck together for the current class, it was about 200 hours. And a lot of that is because you have to research medical literature. Somebody does a study that shows one thing, somebody does a study that disagreed with it. Now you got to find a tiebreaker study to make sure that the information you're putting out is accurate. I don't want it to be my opinion. I want it to have some basis in reality.
So why don't you explain what was your impetus to capture this course digitally so it could be online?
Sure.
I mean, there's lots of things like TED Talks, there's the master class, and we've sort of done a fusion of that kind of thing.
Yeah, we have. Quite honestly, I got tired of people that took the class telling me that I should make an online version so they could have other people see it. And I do like teaching classes. I really enjoy teaching them live, but I also work full-time and have other things to do. So I can't teach as many classes as perhaps people would want.
Right.
It's also challenging for people. It's challenging to get good instruction. Traveling to take a 5-day class turns out to be thousands of dollars. Whatever the tuition is, plus airlines, you have to eat out for 5 or 6 days, you have to rent a car. That's very expensive for people. So if we can give people the same material online, they can watch it over the span of weeks, months, or however long they need to.
Now, where can people find this course? And anybody can take it, right?
Sure. All the courses that I teach are all available for anyone's purchase online. My website is www.crisis-medicine.com. The dash is fairly important. And that's my site with all of the classes that I teach, all of which Rob directed and helped capture for us. And the classes that we just captured these last 2 days will be up on that website as soon as we're done with this, so I can crack the whip and getting back to editing.
No, yes, I'm going to go back and edit for him
as soon as
this broadcast is done. So I want to thank you and your wife for unshackling me from the metal chair that you've put me in for the last couple days and allow me to do this broadcast to prove to my subscribers that we are still here. But one thing I wanted to ask you too, sort of in conclusion, we live in a world where the kinds of active violent events, whether there's school shootings or what happened in Las Vegas, which you went into pretty extensively in this course, as they become, we're almost being inoculated against the horror of it all. Really, do you think that this course ultimately is going to save enough lives?
To use some military terminology, we're right of bang with this course. The bang happened, whether it's an explosive charge or gunfire. We're on the right-hand side of that. We're dealing with the casualties. There certainly are things culturally that we could do to make these events less frequently, but I'm only really dealing with casualty management. The things we're teaching do have the potential to save some lives. One of the issues we've had is, unlike we talked about some Vietnam combat data, that we know very clearly what has killed casualties in Vietnam, and we know very well what has been killing servicemen from the global war on terror since 2001. We don't have similar databases on what injuries are actually killing people in these active violent incidents. From a medical standpoint, if I don't know what's killing people, then it's a little bit of anybody's best guess how to treat them. So we have some things are obvious. People are bleeding to death out of arms and legs, but how often that happens, we don't really know. So we need more data to drive care more scientifically. Right now, based on what we know, these skills do have the ability to save a life. How often the casualties in some of these events are going to need these skills, that's what we're still trying to figure out.
Well, one of the things that I love about you in particular, not just because you're a great guy, but how many physicians, emergency care physicians, were also in the military. And the fact that you've done a fusion, you're bringing this incredibly large knowledge base, both from the medical profession and from the military, together into I think a new skill set.
I think that's fair. A lot of what we're teaching for this pre-hospital care is what's called tactical emergency casualty care, which came from tactical combat casualty care, which is the DoD's guidelines on how to care for these casualties, all of which came out of looking at Vietnam combat casualties. And I actually started learning the database on what was killing casualties in Vietnam when I was in the Special Operations Medical Sergeants course in the late 80s. But it didn't really get a lot of press elsewhere in the military until 1996. So all of this casualty management in these high-risk environments really is drawing upon military data. So it is an interesting interface between emergency medicine, EMS, and the military experience.
And you're constantly evolving the course.
Correct. Because every time there's a new event, we get new information. And one of the things that's scientifically interesting, but unfortunate, of course, with these events, is these events are all very different. Someone who goes into a classroom and shoots several adults is different than shooting several children, which is very different than blowing up 264 people in Boston or shooting over 500 in Las Vegas from 350 or 400 meters. These are very different events, and so we're having trouble getting data on what exactly is killing these people, so how can we intervene and save lives?
Well, on that note, I just want to say that I think that the crisis medicine course, of all the things that I've been involved with, whether it's movies or television or promos or even doing YouTube, crisis medicine is one of the things that I'm most proud of that I've ever done. And I want to thank you for involving me and continuing to involve me. And I know it's not our usual bill of fare here on Robservations, but I do think that crisis medicine is a very important thing to have. And anybody that's interested in the material, I would suggest looking into it. There's a 1-day course, a 3-day course, and a very extensive 5-day course. Where can people find that course?
www.crisis-medicine.com. And the lengths of the courses that Rob listed, those are the in-person courses. All of those in-person courses are available online. And then obviously they're quite a bit shorter by hours because you don't have to fly to Portland, Oregon to take a class.
Well, listen, man, thanks for coming on the show. I know you can't stand this. By the way, he wasn't going to do this. He hates this, even though he's the star of these lectures, which are amazing. I can't believe I got him on the show. So, thank you.
Good. Now I can leave. Thanks.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was a real treat. But a lot of you might know that over the course of these chats, I've had my mother, Nancy Burnett, on the show. I had Elizabeth, my girlfriend, and her daughter Sophie on the show. And I've talked a lot about the fact that I was adopted. And long story short, I always knew I was adopted. My parents told me that I was adopted. I knew I was adopted from a very young age. And the only time I ever treaded on that fact, or tried to trade on that fact, was in the 4th grade when Roots was being aired. And we had to do genealogies. And I tried to be a smartass and say, I don't have to do a genealogy because I'm adopted. Well, I mean, I had a great upbringing, and I never really cared about being adopted. Like, I was always like, did I have to go to the plant that built the car that I drove? You know. So I have a sister. When I was growing up, my parents adopted 2 children, me and my sister Susie. My sister Susie was always more interested in finding out about her past, and I was content to just believe that I was an alien prince that was secreted away on Earth until such time as the extraterrestrials would come take me and provide my birthright to me, and I would be the Paul Atreides of my home planet. That's kind of what I thought. Until 1996. I was 29 years old, and I got a letter in the mail. I was coming home from Alan Spencer's house, the man who created Sledgehammer. And we'd been drinking, it's probably 3 a.m. And there was a letter that my mother had addressed to me, but it had a return envelope from a place, this woman named Marlene K. Smith, who I'd never heard of before. I don't know who that is. And on the back of the letter, my mom had written, "This should prove interesting." And it's 3 a.m. I open this letter up, and the letter says, "My name is Marlene K. Smith. I'm a court-appointed intermediary for the state of Washington." And she says that my client, an adoptee, has been looking for her brother, and the search has led us to you. Now, I can't call my mom. I can't call Marlene K. Smith. I don't know what this means. But, to take over the story, to tell the tale, I've told my side of the story, but I've got a very special guest here for you. I have my 100% biological sister, Colleen Terry, who is going to join us. Colleen, welcome. Oh, wow. Well, look at this. Is this a mimosa?
Pleasure to be on the show today.
Well, it is, and so look at that camera where the green light is.
I see that.
And sit back, enjoy yourself.
Thank you.
Let's get close so people can see our faces. Hey, how you doing? So this is my 100% biological sister. Now, why don't you tell the folks at home, how did all of this happen? Tell the tale.
All right. Well, this goes
like
way
Khan
back.
said, to amuse your captain. No.
So I'm about 6 years old, and I grew up with a sister myself, and we were about 17 months apart. And one day she announced to me, as she would often be the deliverer of important information, she just said, "Oh, we're adopted, right?" So that was my first notion that I'd been adopted. And
you didn't know until you were 6.
I filed that away. I didn't know until I was 6, and no one was telling me anything about that. So cut to, I'm 15 or so, and I'm in the car with my mom, and my stepdad has gone in to pay for gasoline, because in the state of Washington back in the day, that's what you did. And while he was gone, she announced to me, "I thought you should know that you have a biological brother who's about 1.5 years older than you." And she thought that would be a good thing for me to know, because I went to a lot of leadership conferences and camps and
Me too.
church camps, and I understand that. And very involved in athletics and always gone for sporting events. So this might be something I would want to know.
So she just you're at a gas station.
Oh,
she doesn't
at a
even
gas
take you out to
station.
dinner.
No, there's no dinner involved.
And what was you have a brother. Like you
have a brother.
A real brother.
A real brother.
Did she say 100% brother?
She did not say that. No, she did not say that. So I didn't really think of it that way. I was a little
What were you thinking?
reeling just a bit, but Well, I didn't think much.
Do you feel
about
betrayed?
it. I filed that away as well.
Okay.
No, I don't feel betrayed. I'm just very curious. So whenever I went to a track meet or I was at an event, or I would look around for people who, for a young man about a year and a half older than I.
14 months, actually.
14 months, that's right. And
I'm 14 months older than her.
And I would look around for someone who looked like me.
Now, did you wonder, like, so somebody puts you up for adoption. Did you wonder if I was put up for adoption? Like, did you think it was odd that did you ask your mom, well, why didn't you adopt both of us? Was there any did you worry about, no.
No, I knew that I was younger, and it never crossed my mind that there would be any kind of a connection that, however that transpired, that it would continue to, like, there would be any connection between the people who made all of those things happen.
See, I did not know, because I was born first.
Right.
Colleen didn't exist when I was adopted, so my parents had no. The funny thing was they wanted 2 kids, so I had a sister, my sister Susie, who was adopted as well. So I grew up with Susie, who's 2 years and 2 months, or a month and a half younger than me. So it was just crazy that I was put up for adoption and you were put up for adoption, but like nobody went, which we'll get to later. If you haven't watched the first part of this shocking saga. So you never worried about that, though. You knew I was out there somewhere.
Right. I was very curious, and I thought about it every now and then. I'd look around, and it wasn't until, though, that I lived in Hawaii in about 1995. A friend of mine had...
Now, how old were you when you moved to Hawaii?
Ooh, I'm 19, just about to turn 20.
Now, what led you to Hawaii, of all places? Do you go to school there, or what?
Well, my mother was awarded some money in a court settlement, and she decided to take my sister and I to Hawaii for a couple weeks. And by the end of the trip, I had determined that I was moving there. So I thought 6 months from then, but it turned into 1 year. And I had already had 2 years of college finished, so I went there to complete college at Chaminade University. So that was my initial plan.
Wow, and you just stayed.
And I ended up staying, and I thought 2 years, but 2 turned into 10. So I was in Honolulu for 10 years, from 88 until 99. So, all of my 20s in Hawaii.
So what made you decide to look for me?
That's a great question. Well,
like, how did you find Marlene K. Smith?
Right. Well, I was inspired by an article I'd read in the paper about a man reuniting with his son. So I began to think more about it. I began my search for information. So I went to the internet cafe, the proverbial infamous internet cafe.
And this was in its infancy.
That's right. Very new thing. Everyone did not have this opportunity on their desktop at this time.
Right.
You had to go to a cafe. And so I go to this cafe. I find a message board. So before... Well,
like it was in an AOL message board?
Exactly, right. So there was a gentleman that I had placed a message, and a gentleman responded and said, contact Marlene Smith. She helped my brother find me. So that's how I found out about Marlene.
Okay.
So message board.
And where was she in Washington? Like Bellingham or something?
Right. She's up north in Washington. I contact her, and it's over the course of several months that I'm able to afford to hire her, court-appointed intermediary.
So you had to drop some dinero to find me.
A little bit.
Wow.
Yes, it's true. It's true. There's a little bit of an investment here. That's true. So I hired Marlene, and she had to, due to all of the laws that are set up that you explained in very specifically in the state of Washington, you had to have a basis for searching for someone and opening the records. So we used medical reasoning, had the records open. She attained the names, and I started with my brother. I thought, it's my brother. He's going to be as curious as I am about this. He's going to want to meet me. This will be the most neutral place to begin.
Don't even know you exist. Have no clue.
No idea.
No idea. None. I'm just going about my business, living in Los Angeles. And now, how long from the time you hired Marlene Smith to the time you found me? How much time transpired?
Well, I'll start with when she was able to send the letter, which went to your mom. It was 1 month, so I couldn't. I was beside myself trying to comprehend how he couldn't be back in touch with me. I thought I think he must be, the Olympics were going on at the time. I thought he's probably an Olympic athlete. He's out of town. He's just
well, you were very
unavailable.
I mean, you're still very athletic.
Somewhat. There have been
Didn't you teach aerobics?
Seasons. I did, and didn't you teach aerobics?
Yes, I was part of it. Yes, at the Evergreen State College.
Never-ending coincidences.
Yes, never. So wait a minute. It only took a month.
It was a month from the time the letter was sent until I heard back.
Well, how long did it take?
You had reached out to her.
How long did it take to find my mom in the first place, to send the letter?
Oh, well, it was over the course of being able to make the payments.
Right.
So it was probably about 3 months. Yeah.
Okay, so you send this letter, and it took a while. So the letter, like, how are you feeling? We have both kind of the same eyes.
We do.
How are you feeling about this time that's passed by? Like, were you upset?
I do not like this time that's passed. I have completely justified that you couldn't possibly be available. You must be out of the country, out of town. Something very serious has come up for you not to respond. So.
Well, okay. Just to tell the story, I responded as soon as I got the letter.
Right, I know that.
And what was very funny about this is, I get this letter, and I called Marlene Smith that morning, and I said, like, what's the deal? I'm like, do I have a half brother? Do I have a half? It's because it didn't even say if you were. I don't think it said if you were my sister. It just said my client, an adoptee, was looking for, or maybe it said her brother. And so I call this woman and I'm talking to her, and there's all this legal rigmarole. But I'm a funny guy, so I was like, so are you telling me that you're now going to have to call your client and tell your client that she's going to have to wait for me to sign a bunch of legalese papers that you're going to send to me, and then I'll FedEx them back? So you're going to call your client today, but then she's going to have to wait for another 2 or 3 weeks before all of this is settled? And she's like, well, that's how it goes. And I'm like, no. Why don't you just... this is the funny thing. I didn't know where this person was. Marlene wouldn't say. I said, is she in the Pacific time zone? And Marlene said, no. And I'm like, ooh. I thought that was like cool. That, oh, she's not in the Pacific time zone. And I said, okay, well, I said, maybe you could call her up and without revealing any information, just say, hey, there's this person that wants to discuss family matters with you, and maybe you could call them at this number at 6 o'clock Pacific time.
And that's exactly what happened.
So she called you. Now, what did you think when she called you? Like, after I called her, what did she do? How did she call you, like, right away?
Right. Well, I came home from work, and she left a message for me. And at the time, I had 2 jobs. So we're talking Hawaii. It's a very expensive, which explains why it took me a few months to pay for this service to begin with. But so I had a second job, and I was going to return home. So I was very specific about what time would work out for him to call. And she let me know right away. We made the arrangement, and we were on the phone that night, just after 9.
And I don't know if you remember this, but
will.
So she calls, she calls me, and I pick up the phone. I'm like, hello, and there's nothing, just silence on the phone. And I said something to the effect of, I've got dinner on the table. You don't call, you don't write. So I'm just waiting here for you. I got maybe a slight chuckle.
Okay. Well,
so what was it like?
The truth is that I actually still have this entire conversation on tape. So we began to chat, and
of course you do.
And I say to him, because disclosure. Is it all right if I take this conversation? And he says, I already am.
It's true, I was, because I was
one of the first things.
We were both recording the conversation.
So
I don't have my tape anymore, though.
Perfect sense, but I do. So, And they're all on these little cassettes when that's how you captured a voicemail.
So what was it like? I mean, I'm interested too. Forgetting that it's me, from my perspective, I had this just adventure dropped in my lap. It wasn't an alien spacecraft that came down to take me back to my homeworld of Arrakis or somewhere in the Landsrad. It wasn't that. But it was kind of like that. Like, to find out that for me, it was this, wow, you just never know what's going to happen when you get up in the morning. And suddenly, I have this sister that has been looking for me, and I kind of was your alien prince, so to speak. You know, the siblings that we had to get together to make our Wonder Twin powers activate or something like that. So what was it like for you to talk to me on the phone? Like, were you scared?
No, not at all. I was just so joyful, so elated, and we spoke for 3 hours the first night, well over an hour the next night, and we both were busy, had things to do. But this, once in a while something drops in that...
So we're talking now, I prepare a bunch of pictures.
That's right.
I made a big...
In fact, right here, right now, I just so happened to have.
And look,
I brought props.
Look who the first picture that I sent you.
This is the one that I pulled to the side because here we have
Mike Shirts and I
right here
on the beach. That's at Alki Beach.
Right here, you just heard from the good doctor.
Yeah.
So this is one of the many photographs that you sent to me, and I love it. You've got notes on here and Captain Kirk, Taylor.
By the way,
Knight,
there will be
friends,
people who are going to ask us questions.
Yes, I remember.
Yes.
So remember that. Yes.
So wait a minute. So do you remember what you? So I sent her a package of photos that sort of documented my life. Do you remember what you sent me back?
Ooh, a baby picture.
That's it.
I sent a baby picture. Right.
I don't know what she looks like. I mean, she could have been living in a trailer park for all I know. Like, she could have been 400 pounds eating Oreos. I don't know anything about her. I have nothing about her. So then you fly me to Hawaii. I didn't realize you were working 2 jobs.
Well, it was interesting timing because I had received a check in the mail just after I met you for some work I'd done. And I just so happened to have plenty. So that's what needed to happen, seemingly the next step in the story. So it just worked out that way. Okay,
now, if you haven't looked at the videos that are on the Burnettwork of when we first met, why don't you explain? So you fly me to Hawaii, I get on a plane. By the way, telling this story to women like there was a wedding party, there was all like 8 hot chicks on the plane sitting around me. I got to tell them that I was going to meet my sister. Man, let me tell you, I've been dropping this story. It's worked for 25 years, this tale.
Just about that,
So you had a surprise waiting for me at the airport.
Right. Well, at the time I was working for Hill & Knowlton Public Relations, and so I was in PR mode. And I just so happened to call up 3 different news stations, and 2 of them came down and covered our meeting. So this was when you could go to the gate and meet your loved ones and see your friends off. And so here they show up. So Robert walks off of the plane. He deplanes and decides to be the practically last person off the plane.
I gotta say, there are a few times I've been nervous in my life. I was a little nervous. I was nervous because I didn't know what was going to happen. So you can see this. There's 2 different videos that are on the Burnettwork you can watch because I had no idea if there was anybody who was going to get local news, it would be my sister. And you did. Now, here's the best part. So I step off this plane. She's hot. Like, she was not a 400-pound woman eating Oreo cookies. I'm like, you're a beautiful woman. And you had it going on. I'm like, well, this is interesting. And then there's news crews, and that was a little weird.
Right. Well,
because
that was unexpected. So we both had a few unexpected surprises, and
unexpected surprises. How about the insects? She'd already got a hotel room for me, but she had put rubber insects inside the bed.
Well,
giant cockroaches.
Surprises.
This was not
I
welcome.
didn't have time to do all this for how old were we? We're almost 30. So for almost 30 years, I didn't get to play any jokes or really become the thorn in your side.
And she did it very quickly.
Yes,
she became a thorn in my side very, very quickly. And so we spent, 4 days together?
Probably. I'd have to go back to my calendars and repeat.
She is a godly woman. I'm a heathen. And everywhere we went in Hawaii, people saw that news story. We couldn't walk 5 feet on Waikiki without somebody stopping us.
Wow.
People were buying us drinks, and I'm like, yes, let's have another drink. And I don't think you were approving. Were you approving of me?
Yeah, I didn't know you. We just met.
Right, we didn't know, yes.
I didn't drink, actually, then. I actually didn't drink much. That's not true. Not completely, but I usually didn't drink. Most of my friends knew me as she doesn't.
Yeah, she was a woman of
So they bought you drinks.
Yes, but I would... Right. No, I think I probably had them buy us both drinks, and I just drank them both. But it was pretty crazy that everybody watched. Everybody knew us. Everybody. I mean, Oahu's not a big island. It was pretty interesting, and it was very weird because you were you were showering me with positive vibes and emotion, and you were constantly examining me, looking at my earlobes and crinkles in my forehead, and I did feel a little that I was being examined, and probably rightfully so. You for me, this is just an adventure. I'm like, I got a free trip to Hawaii. There's this hot girl dragging me around the islands, so she might have been, looking at my earlobes. Okay, it's cool. But what was it like? Like, was I what you expected? Was I a disappointment? Was I a douchebag? Like, what was it like for you?
No, definitely. It was very surreal, first of all. And it was all very exciting and unimaginable. So when I look back and I talk about consider the whole experience, I really call it was so magnificent. And yet with all of the emotions
I told her to say
that are tied in, it's also I use the word horrific because...
Horrific?
When we get down the road about the story, it's just the feeling of what you never had, maybe this is good, so maybe that's a magnificent but we never had the chance to be friends or siblings as children.
Right.
And we never had that opportunity. So for me, and then we, I don't know if you're getting into this now, but later we end up meeting someone else.
Yeah,
and there are just some tragedies and
comedic
elements and just some very disappointing things later. But at the time, it was all very high level, very exciting. I was so happy to unite with Robert, and I've never called him Rob.
Yeah. Well, for me too. I mean, it was a very strange.
And I did think you were very interesting. And you had a great story, and we had so many things we found out early on in common, and some great connections.
Yeah.
I don't know, so.
Well, for me, it was interesting in that you presented me with this, as a storyteller myself and loving stories, you dropped this great story in my lap. I got to, oh my God. And it literally came out of the blue, whereas you knew for a long time.
Right.
And I had no idea. And for me, it was a little strange because, I know Susie was like, well, is she your sister more than... And I'm like, I don't know her. Like, you were still a stranger. I'm like, okay, but...
Exactly. Yeah.
And I had many questions. Like you're 14 months. Why didn't somebody give you to my parents who adopted me? Like, if they had another kid. And here, the weird thing about it for me was that we were 100% siblings. We weren't half siblings. We were 100% biological siblings, and we were put up for adoption. And I thought that was strange. And in a way, I had a stable home environment. You didn't have as stable of a home environment as I did.
I always tell the story that you were adopted by a different kind of family than mine.
Yes.
But you say that. See, that's your impression. But when you're living wherever you are, that becomes your normal.
Right.
And I can see in my life where there are very stable influences in seasons in my life, and some that were throughout those formative years. My parents were both always
Your adoptive parents.
available. Right. So I will say they were present, but not always at the same time.
So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your adoptive mother and adoptive father.
Well, early on in my life, they decided to divorce. So by the time I was 3, I had a nanny that was a live-in nanny. And we lived, my sister and I lived with my dad, who had custody. And he and my mother thought about getting back together at some point, but then made a complete break by the time I was about 5. And for a short time, so I grew up in West Seattle, and you should see how much that house is worth.
Oh my God! Yeah,
Overlooking the sound.
Yeah,
It's beautiful. The million plus.
Yeah, my
So
house
that disappeared and dissolved before
So
I was 6.
We both grew up in the Seattle area,
Right.
and I'm convinced we were at a high school party together in the summer.
Oh no, we weren't. We
weren't?
weren't at the party together because that was the person hosting the party went to my high school, but we were not close friends, so I wasn't there.
Okay.
Right.
That was a rager, though.
But I knew people that were at that party.
Yes.
And we should talk about how you ended up there. That's an excellent part of the story.
So, okay, that is sort of funny. So I went to a leadership camp because I was on the student government between my junior and senior year of high school. So we went to this camp for a week, and I met a lot of people at this leadership camp, including some people from Paulsbo. And there was a girl, I guess she fancied me. Her name was Dawn Bosselman. And for whatever reason, I think it was her, she called me and she says, you gotta come to this party in Paulsbo. You have to take a ferry, right?
Right, you take
So
a ferry.
I take the ferry, and I went to this party, and it was a house party. It was huge. I mean, there was 100 people there. It was a movie style raging house party, and there's a funny story. I won't get into it here. That has nothing to do with you, but it was interesting. It would have been a great scene in a movie. It involved 2 girls. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, so I have a question for you.
Okay.
All right, so how did you end up at that leadership camp? So how did you end up as part of that student body group?
Well, how you mean? And how did I get on student government?
Right. Did you run for office?
Yes, I won. I won. I ran for student body president, and I lost to Bob Fortner. Okay. I lost, and there were 4 elected officials. Then they had to pick 2 other students to be on to round out the student government. And I believe it was myself, I was picked, and Kelly Godo was picked. So we rounded out the 6-person ASB, Associated Student Body Government, for the 1984-1985 year.
Right. Now, where did you go to high school?
Mercer Island
All right.
High School.
So I went to North Kitsap Senior High School in Paulsbo, Washington. Go Vikings! And you Vikings out there can confirm this. This is not made up, and Rob and I had never met until we were 28 and 29.
That is correct.
1996. So my senior year, we're 1 year apart in school. My senior year, I run for ASB president. And and I lose. And I am appointed by the vice president as advisor to the ASB officers.
Wow. Now, did you go to that
is-
leadership camp too?
I did not, because see, that was
A year, you would have been
right.
a year behind me.
So, but the thing is that the year before I ran for president, I ran for ASB secretary, and I did not win that. And if I had, I would have gone to that leadership camp where you met Todd Jones and Don Bosselman and all of these people. And the reason we found this out is the first we're talking, and I'm mentioning where I went to high school. And so I tell him I went to Paulsbo. And he said that he had met Miss Paulsbo, Don Bosselman, gone to
I didn't know she was Miss Paulsbo.
Or gone to camp with her. And
let me just say, when you go to these leadership camps and it's high school students, it was very randy. It was a randy place. There was a lot of erotic energy because there was people you hadn't met before. But I will say this. At this leadership camp, they showed us Sidney Lumet's timeless classic, 12 Angry Men. And I was sitting in the front row, and Dawn Bosselman seated herself right next to me. And during the entire movie, she was like rubbing my inner thigh and asked...
Censor.
Yes, Dawn Bosselman was all over me. And I have to say, she was a very attractive girl, but I'm like, I never made out with girls in movies. I didn't like it when people... I didn't want to be touched. I'm watching 12 Angry Men. I'd never seen it before. Maybe in a different, I'm just saying, Dawn, if you're actually watching this, I was not happy that night. I wanted to watch 12 Angry Men. I hadn't seen it before.
You're all about the films.
I'm all about the films.
Right.
It's like when Julie Williams thought I was gay because I was watching The Road Warrior rather than making out with her. I'm like, come on, man. It's The Road Warrior. That's a true story.
So I noticed you have this affinity for film.
I do. Mm-hmm. I love film. As we're all imagination connoisseurs, I call my people ask me to ask you this: would you consider yourself an imagination connoisseur?
Absolutely.
What are some
Absolutely.
of your? I would be remiss if I didn't ask. What are some of your favorite movies?
Well, now that's a different topic, but under the umbrella of imagination connoisseur. But I would say that I was very influenced by the film The Wizard of Oz at a very young age. So probably 5 the first time I saw that.
Right.
On a little black and white television across the street at the neighbor's house.
That's
one
sad.
night. Scary.
Sad.
On a black and white. And you're 5. That's a lot of nightmare
fuel.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It never occurred to me after you found me, because we didn't really talk about... She was always scheming and planning and stuff. I'm just like, hey, Marlene K. Smith, court-appointed intermediary for the state of Washington, called me. So we met in August. July, August?
We met in August.
We met in August. I was the critic at large for Sci-Fi Universe magazine, and we were putting on a big award show at the El Rey Theater in L.A. Mark Altman, who I made Free Enterprise with, Harry and Gab, I think Dan Weber was involved, Amanda Finch, all my buddies were putting on this big award show that a lot of heavy hitters came to. So I had that coming up. Well, Marlene calls me up and she says, guess what? I found your biological mother. Now, I don't think you and I ever had a conversation like where you actually told me you were looking for a biological mother. But of course you were.
I mentioned it, right? I may have mentioned that.
So
that was
what was that like?
2.
How did she call you up? How did you find and I mean, wasn't finding me enough?
I'm sorry, it wasn't enough. I had to keep going. So I kept digging, as you know, and we just moved on to the next person. She actually, I don't know that we necessarily, it was whoever we could locate.
Right.
So that
well,
was, but you were first.
I was first.
Right.
But what was it like when she called you up? Did she call you up and say, I found your mother?
Right. Well, she gave me a little bit of information, told me she was on the West Coast.
Because she had to contact her to find out whether she'd talk to you.
Right. So she ended up getting through to her brother Terry first.
Okay.
And so Terry reached out to her, and then she responded, and she said she knew, she felt like she knew her kids were going to come find her someday. Isn't that amazing?
Right. And why don't you tell the folks at home, if you haven't watched my previous videos, what did our mom do and where did she work?
Well, she was the director of Public Relations and Advertising for the MGM Grand Casino and Theme Park in Las Vegas. And
Cha-ching!
she worked there for a total of 23 years. So she was there when it was Bally's, the Bally's fire, and then they created the Lion and that.
Right, they built a new facility.
Yes, well, of course, yes, right.
And that was
all themed in The Wizard of Oz.
Well, that is correct.
Yeah.
They had. I think it still is. You see the lion and the Dorothy and the. Yeah,
they've done a lot of adjustments there.
Well, what was that like for you? I mean, I found out later, like, obviously, Marlene was not, I was not her client. So, what was it like when she called you up and said...
Oh, I was absolutely thrilled and found out that she was open to a meeting.
Oh, she was? Okay.
She was open to a meeting, and we spoke on the phone, and I have those conversations taped as well. And so it was all very incredibly emotional. And the interesting thing is when I go back to the tapes for a bit, you can't tell, except by the content, who's speaking, because our voices are so similar. And there were so many amazing similarities among all of us. But
yeah, so I think Marlene had called me after, I guess, you had talked. It's not like you called me up and said, hey, guess what? Like, I had to hear it from her first, not you.
So that's how you remember it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that wrong?
No, not necessarily.
I mean, anyway.
I'm sure I called you right after that, though.
Well, you did.
I called you right after I spoke to her.
You
and
did.
I probably have tapes to prove all
Yeah. But now I'm going to have to put these tapes down. First of all, there's people that are sending in questions. And
thank you.
Let's see.
Thank you for that.
Let's see if anybody... Rob, your sis is eloquent with a nice smile. Good times. That comes from
nice.
A long-time
Thank
imagination
you so
connoisseur, Movie Finobi.
Cute.
Manang says, Han, justice is coming. Yes. And Draco Eris says, the Age of Fire series turns 15 years old this year. By the way, Eris, thank you for generously supporting the channel. The Age of Fire series turns 15 years old this year. There's even a new book out. It's called Novice Dragoneer, which takes place 1,000 years after the dragon fate. The series is like Watership Down, but with dragons. Ooh, that sounds good. Have you read that series?
No rabbits?
Yeah, I love Watership Down.
How about dragons and rabbits? Somebody's going to pick that up.
Obi-Wan sent in a super chat and says, oh, Rob, that is so amazing. Happy to see you two having fun, and your sister is beautiful.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Yes. Mukbang Review sends in a super chat and says, at 1917, we'll listen later. Want to support the machine and family. Love my sister. Jet Screamer, well, thank you, Mukbang. Jet Screamer says, Kapla to your new formed house. That's Kapla is a Klingon term. And this would be the house of... What would it be the house of? Because you found me. You put the house together. So you have to, it'd be the family name, the family crest. Would it be the house of Linda?
I'm going to put that brand together.
The house of Rungo?
Back to you on it.
I'm going backwards. Canada Rock says, I just wanted to say that it was great meeting you in NYC, and I really appreciate how nice and approachable you were. Going out now to watch all the nominated short films. So unfortunately, I'm going to miss your live show, but I'll be sure to catch it later. Well, that's very nice of you. Yes, for those of you who don't know, I was in New York last weekend for the Schmodown. I got to meet a lot of people, and I want to thank everyone for filling my gullet with more drinks than I've had in a very, very long time. So back to you. Okay, so you came and you saw the Sci-Fi Universe Awards.
That's right. So it just so happened that Robert had invited me to attend the awards, which were occurring in October.
Yes.
And Linda had signed the fax to approve the contact. And that happened not long before that. And so we ended up making arrangements to go from LA. So I'm flying from Honolulu over to LA. Then the two of us flew over to Las Vegas.
Yes.
And landing in Las Vegas is like landing on another planet.
Had you been to Vegas before?
First time. Very first time.
So I used to go to Vegas all the time.
I understand that.
Well, we did. So first time in Vegas. Now, my mindset is still I'm participating in an adventure. What was your mindset, knowing that we're going to meet our biological mother?
A complete meltdown while we were at dinner with your friends, unbeknownst to you. See, I can talk about it all now, but emotional meltdown. So it was a bit of anxiety. I usually don't have, I'm a planner, and a bit of anxiety that night. Yeah. Unbeknownst. But yes, you didn't notice?
Well, let me just say, like, it was, for me, I was really like, what's going to happen?
I'm so sorry. You had to endure so much.
No, I felt, to me the whole time, I'm like, okay, we're going to meet our biological mother. Every girl I ever dated always said to me at some point, don't you want to know who your real parents are? And I would always answer, I've lived with my real parents since I was a week old. And they're like, no. I go, I know what you mean. But I'm like, no. It never really occurred to me. It honestly never did. I didn't think about it. I really didn't, because I had a great life. And I'm like, I just assumed that whoever gave me up for adoption had reasons, and I would respect those reasons. And it was cool. But, I'm a guy. And for you, I knew that you were like a wreck on the plane. You were like nervous. Now, McCarran Airport's not the biggest airport in the world. So I was wondering, like, what's going to happen when we step off the plane? When I got off to meet her, there was a news crew. Who knew what would happen this time?
It was pretty quiet.
It was pretty quiet, but still, the main event took place right after we got off that plane.
Yes, it did.
What was that like for you?
Well, it was very exciting, but you have no idea what the other person is really walking through. And Linda was quite good at covering her emotions or things that were happening in her life. So she was a pro. So she never let on. But
did you know she was going to be at the airport?
I did. Yeah,
you did.
I did know.
Maybe I did.
Yeah.
Now, what was your first? I won't say what I felt.
I knew she would try to be there, and I was quite certain that she would come through in this moment in time. That yes, she would be. So.
This is Aaliyah, the dog.
Hi, Aaliyah.
Hi, Aaliyah. Would you like a cookie?
Hey.
Would you like a cookie?
Do you like steak?
Oh, go get a cookie. There you go.
You like steak?
Now, let me ask you something. What were your first impressions on seeing Linda?
Ooh, first impressions. She looks so cool.
That was my impression
right?
too. Linda was like, she had this cascading red hair, and the way I remember it,
right.
she was wearing like a lycra, like a lycra copper top.
Right.
And then she had these big, thick, like black coveralls that were, and these.
She was wearing
like,
a suspender pantsuit.
Yeah, suspender pantsuit. She had these big glasses on.
Top notch.
She looked like both Hollywood and Vegas. I mean, anything you would have imagined your biological mother to be, and the way she was standing, waiting for us. At the end, up the thing, she was just standing there. I'm like,
so cool.
That's got to be our mother. I was pretty stoked. I have to say, like, if you're gonna have to, find your biological mother, it didn't get much better than the image of her as we're walking up towards her. And she was, in McCarran, they have the elevated walkways, so she was a little bit above us.
Right.
And it just felt like we were going to see, she did look like Vegas royalty. But cool Vegas royalty. Kind of, right?
Right. Very much. She always reminded me of a 1940s actress, just off of some set.
Yes.
Always so.
Now, how did you feel? Like, I know you guys you both kind of lost it.
Right, and not in the way where, you're weeping or anything. I think you just you're standing back, looking at each other, and still, this was just, I'd only met you a few times.
Right.
And so we hadn't spent a lot of time together. And that night, we only had 24 hours that we were going to be in Vegas. I had to get back and go back to work. You probably had to get back too.
Yeah.
And so, I remember we ended up at the MGM, and we were having dinner.
Well, she took us to that. We had to go meet everybody in the hotel first.
Well,
all
right,
of our
right,
coworkers. Yeah. So here's the funny thing.
The walkthrough of the
here's
photos I brought.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
I love it.
But you guys, it was very funny to me because there was a lot of emotion when you first met, and I was kind of standing back, kind of watching, and then Linda turns to me and goes, "Let's get a drink," and I'm like, "Mom," and she takes us to the MGM Grand. And she has arranged, there was a Mexican restaurant in the MGM Grand. And everybody she
Coyote
worked...
Cafe.
Oh, Coyote Cafe. I don't know if it's still there. But everybody that she worked with was there, pretty much. Now, why don't you tell, because people are asking, give a little background on Linda. Had Linda told anybody, including her ex-husband, that she'd ever had children?
All right, well, this is such a great story and amazing... and so telling about humanity. So Linda was, how old when she had you?
She was 17 when she had me.
And 19 when she had me. Just about to turn 20. Same age as when I was about to move to Honolulu. So
right.
I can't quite imagine all of this, but she ended up, the reason she ended up having 2 children was...
Yeah, why don't you explain that?
Right, so she had a history of seizures. So she was taking a medicine called Dilantin. And she was also taking birth control while she was with our father.
And birth control was new.
Right, canceled out the birth control.
Yeah.
So no one was expecting us, nor were they interested
and
in
she
that
was
opportunity. So she ends up with 2 children.
Well, wait a second. You got to get. From what I understand,
there's way more to that, which you outlined.
Yes. I've told. You should go back and watch the story. I tell my side. So I did a Robservations about it, but just to be clear here, she didn't find out she was pregnant until her 2nd trimester with me.
And me 4 months in.
Yeah, and they didn't know because they didn't know Dilantin canceled out. The birth control, the pill was relatively new. It had been on the market for only a few years, less than a decade.
Right.
So in Washington State, they did not allow 2nd trimester abortions in 1967 or 68. So I'm sorry, but our biological father, I'm not a fan. I never met him. But
neither did I.
He was 26, right?
Yeah.
He was 26 and Mom was 17.
A little bit older.
I mean, I understand the Beat generation, and he came from an artistic background, but come on, dude.
So
what's up?
He was not excited about the news.
No.
And about Robert, but he never knew that I was born because Linda decided to not tell him, and she was not around him. Although over the course, they were 7 years together on and off, but clearly off while she was carrying me. So she carried me, and I was adopted into this family just a few days after I was born.
Well, from what I understood, when she found out when she found out I was coming, our biological father's family paid for her prenatal care.
Right, and that's all outlined in.
And they got her the best doctors, and my mother that adopted me gave birth to a stillborn child, and that doctor arranged for my adoption. So when Linda was pregnant again with you, because Patrick did not know, our biological father did not know that she was pregnant again, and she never told him, she didn't have the prenatal care. She didn't have anybody looking out for her.
Right, so she was living in a house with a group of kids, basically. And
Hippies.
I remember her telling me that one of them would go and steal prenatal vitamins for me. Very grateful, whoever you are. Thank you. But you were getting to how few people knew about this situation. So
Linda never told anyone that she met later in life when she went to Las Vegas that she'd ever had 2 kids, including her husband.
That's correct. Her husband of 20 years did not know she ever had 2 children. Her parents both passed away without knowing she had ever been pregnant. And her family, her 3 brothers, stepmother, no one knew. Best friends, no one knew.
By the way, Austin Hernandez sent in a super chat and says, "You guys are awesome."
Oh, thank you, Austin. You're awesome too. Thank you.
And Mukbang Reviews says,
for
"Missed you
weighing
while
in.
you've been away. Everyone needs breaks. What was your number 2 movie of the year?" Presumably Irishman was number 1. My number 1 was Parasite. I'd say that. I'd probably say Parasite is my number 2 movie of the year. And I'm really interested to see where that's going to go as far as the Oscars are concerned. John Markle, John M., sent a tip in and said, "I mentioned to you that I cared for my mom for 10 years, unpaid, and her house was reverse mortgaged. I'm still getting on my feet with a new trade at age 55. I love your content and the community you are building. I want to do what I can when I can. Thank you." Well, John, that's very sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, one of the things that I think is great, and I just realized I forgot. Last night here in Portland, I'll play it tomorrow, I met Roberto Suarez, who you all have seen, an Imagination Connoisseur. He was the first video I think I played when people started sending me videos. By the way, I'm back on getting letters and videos from everybody, so send them in. But it was great to meet him. We went out for drinks last night. He bought drinks for me and Dr. Shirts, so I want to thank you for that. By the way, he's got a lovely family. I didn't meet them, but he's got a lovely wife and 4 kids, and it was great. And I have to say that I've met people, Imagination Connoisseurs. I met them in New York, and I got to meet here, and it's terrific, and I want to continue to do that. So don't be strangers. So that's a good thing. Angel Cortez also says justice for Han. So okay, so now let me ask you, now that we've given a little background on Linda, what were your impressions of Linda after she had met us? Because I loved her. I thought she was great. But I always felt from her, and I told her this a lot, I always felt that she felt guilty about giving us up for adoption. Did you feel that way?
No doubt about that. I know, and I know that she did feel that way. And I didn't ever hold anything against her decision in a season of her life that was very unexpected. She didn't in so many ways invite that. She didn't have support in that. She didn't feel like she could find that in her circle.
Right.
And so I wanted her to be free from that. I could tell.
Me too. I mean,
yes.
She got to come to see Free Enterprise and go to the rap party. She was at the premiere, but I always felt from her, she met my, I'll tell you a story. So my biological father, Richard Dick Burnett, went to see her once in Las Vegas, and she wasn't there. And he wrote her the loveliest letter about how proud he was and how happy he was to have me as a son, and it was amazing. And she called me, but she was blubbering when she read this letter. But I mean, I really liked her a lot. But I often felt that, I told her a lot. I said, look, I had a great life. Obviously you had a little different life than me, but I said, I had a great life. You have nothing to worry about. I'm just happy I got to exist. Because as I explained to my, Patrick put her on a plane and sent her when he found out she was pregnant, he sent her by herself to California to have a second trimester abortion. And she was in the waiting room. She was at the facility to have me scooped from her womb, as it were. I was this close to never existing. And I can't imagine what non-existence must have been like. I'm glad I never got to know. But I'm happy to be here.
So is everyone here.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. And it was a really interesting way. I think in a way, when she told me that, my perspective on life actually changed. Like for me, meeting her and finding out how close I came to never being here at all, I think made me, like, I'm a pretty optimistic guy, but learning that about yourself, knowing how close you came to non-existence, made me realize that no matter what happens in my life, I usually split things into problems or inconveniences. And if you really think about it, most of life is just one inconvenience after another. Terminal cancer, that's a problem. Dr. Schertz, who you met earlier, has beat terminal cancer twice. And yes, twice. That's a problem. I've never really had problems in my life, knock on wood. And I think part of the reason that I have the outlook that I have is after meeting Linda and finding that out about myself. I don't know, did you feel anything like that?
Ooh, great question. I think that walking through the experience, I had to face some things about what I really believed.
Oh.
And I remember feeling that things were a little bit unfair in my eyes until I was ready to really receive that we aren't able to evaluate a situation for what it is
but what
until
do you
we
mean,
get a little perspective.
What do you mean about unfair? Like that your life was unfair, things are unfair? Like what do you mean by that?
Well, I didn't really, my perspective was that although I walked through a lot of things that most people would find disappointing, tragic, unacceptable, different types of things that someone would feel real compassion for you. I just grew up becoming more resilient and feeling strengthened, and that was a blessing. Those things that happened to me were a blessing because that helped me understand a lot of other people that I never otherwise would have.
Okay.
But when I met the two of you, I felt so robbed of this part of my life because I always knew when I was around a lot of families at the time, and I could see this biological connection that they had, and I could see this loyalty, and I never really had that.
Right.
And so that didn't exist for me. So I would observe that, and I think that might have been a bit of a driver at that time for me to go ahead and take steps into that search when I did.
Yeah.
And there's just there's something that you can never get back.
Right.
And when I met you and when I met Linda, there was this absolutely undeniable, powerful desire to have this connection that no one could take away, that I never had before. So this was something that I so wanted. And then later on...
Yeah, and I have to be honest, I have to apologize to you because I wasn't ready to... I don't know if I've ever have been, but I wasn't ready to... To me, it was like I had an adventure and then it was kind of over.
Right.
You know,
I get
like...
it. Well, you were about to move into creating the film that you wrote and was about you.
But it was like...
what else is there after that?
I mean, to speak to...
Really?
No, well, to speak to that, I mean, I have never been emotionally close with my family. And part of it is the way my family is. I mean, I had a great upbringing and my parents were very supportive, but I didn't discuss my feelings with them. You know, my head was in the clouds. I was reading a book or I was building a model or I was so immersed in my interests that I think there's a part of me. If somebody asked if I ever had to go to therapy, I would probably tell my therapist that I have difficulty connecting with people on a real emotional level. I guess I would say somebody once said it was hard to really get to know me because I agree with that. I do not share a lot of what's going on in my mind.
But then you're so compassionate and emotional about the things that you love and intense, and there really is nothing else except what's happening, and so you're very much like that, and you can't. That is from the outside, that is observable.
Oh, it's. So. I mean, I think people like the people that are watching this show know that I really love all of this stuff, and I really love people. And
right, exactly.
You know, you can't.
You're so intuitive, and you are so in tune to humanity, and you're always speaking about how all of these translations onto film or celluloid are representative of this part of humanity and this. And so you understand the psyche and the emotion and the compassion, and you have all of these deep emotions in you. That's so completely clear.
Yeah, it's just...
And yet you say this about yourself.
Well, because I'm a hard... I guess... I think of Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, who said that his wife said of him, he was a hard man to know. And while it's easy to all of this externalization is my way of perhaps... Maybe it's my armor, to not... to stay sort of... I don't know, away. I'm not as emotionally connected to people as I probably should be. And maybe that was a result of the fact that while I had a great upbringing, and my parents were involved in my life and they were supportive, I never had a conversation with my mom about why I loved any of this stuff. She knew that I loved all this stuff, but she never asked me what did it mean to me. Like, we never had those conversations. And that applied to everything. Like, my mother never talked to me about... She never once said a word about any girl I ever dated, except the first time I ever heard anything about it was Carol Backer, who's like my godmother, said to me, it was in college once, and she said, "Your mom says you have a new girlfriend." And I said, "Really?" Like, I didn't even occur to me. What did she say? And she goes, "Well, she said she's like all of your other girlfriends. She's beautiful and she's really smart." I'm like, that's what my mom says? My mother had never once... Because I always had girlfriends from the time I loved girls. And it was, but we never talked about it. Like, she never asked me ever. Mm-hmm. So it was just weird, and I didn't have that kind of a connection. But I felt that with Linda, I did feel a connection with her. Like, and it was because it was new. Like, she's a new lady, and we had this immediate thing that was given to us. Like, okay, you're my biological mother, so we've got this shared history, but she was more like a buddy. Her friend John, I call him John Steed. He looked like John Steed from the Avengers. Patrick McNee. Like, he was this man that was wildly in love with Linda.
And she with him.
Mm-hmm. And I would go out to Vegas. I mean, she'd get us free bungalows behind the Aladdin. I mean, she was a good person to know. Put it that way. So we had Linda and I saw her a lot. Like, I would go out to Vegas a lot and avail myself of the opportunities she and John Steed could provide. But yeah.
So you mentioned something earlier about her weeping. I mean, and then when you observed us when we first met, you have to know that this person that I knew was very closed and very much, you did not know what she was thinking.
Well, yeah, I didn't have to.
Always had a game face on.
Always.
So
tell me, we didn't get to know Linda for very long.
Right, just that 24 hours. And we were on the back lot of the MGM, which is where they have a theme park. We went on the Sky Screamer.
Yep.
And she made sure we had a great time. We went out and played blackjack.
Yes.
She gave us money. She gave us cash to go gambling.
Yes, she did.
Our dinner was 3 hours.
Yeah.
We met some of her best friends.
And they didn't know about us either. So she had to sort of,
right.
They didn't know. Like, can you imagine?
Goodness.
She's known people for 20 years.
Oh, my word, right. And the people that she worked with, they didn't know she called me so a week later, I go back to Hawaii after we met her.
Right.
And 1 week later, I'm in a job transition. I get this job, and I have a week off right after I meet her. This is really amazing because it's really hard to get away. And I went and stayed with her for 1 week at her apartment. I went to work with her, and although we look somewhat alike, I don't know who picked up on it, but she would introduce me as her goddaughter. So there were a few introductions.
Wow.
Of her friend Colleen, who was her goddaughter. Isn't that the truth?
I think she might have said that similar things about, but it was still like she always had a game face on. Now, we knew her for 5 years.
Right, it was 5 years.
What happened this is not to bum anyone out, but what happened to Linda?
Well, I remember when I first met her. I'm observing her in her world, and she's walking around, running things at the MGM and making everything happen, and so social, greeting everyone. She was just like Wonder Woman. That was how I remember describing her.
She was like Wonder Woman.
I was so proud that she was my mother.
Yeah.
I was just so thrilled. So I'm watching all of this, and she's just larger than life. Remember, we mentioned looks like the 1940s stepped off the set.
She was large and in charge.
Yep.
And she was beautiful.
And she was.
And I'm not just saying that. She was a beautiful woman. And she was very classy and elegant. She wasn't trashy Vegas. She was upscale Vegas.
Right. So
she would have been the person who would book Celine Dion, and she was a mover and shaker.
Right. So the next time I went out to see her was for Mother's Day it would have been 97. And I was so excited because I had this idea of a gift I wanted to bring her. And I knew exactly what I wanted, and I went looking around for it in one block from my downtown condo in Honolulu. I found exactly the gift I wanted to bring. So I go to visit with her, and incidentally, I'm wearing this ring today. It's a pearl with the diamond next to it.
Well, by the way, I'm going to interrupt you. Movie Finobi sent in a super chat and says, "Your sister glitters. Laugh out loud. My lady, sculpted leather art by Viking B, wants to know if that's her shirt or a necklace. Ooh. Thanks for sharing this family time."
This is a necklace. Thank you very much for the compliment.
And let's see. There's John Suntress of the Word Balloon podcast sends in a super chat and says, "Great meeting your sister. Still enjoying Picard. I've not seen episode 2 of Picard, but I will, and I'm going to be talking about it. And I'm reading the IDW Countdown prequel. Have you read the current IDW Trek comics? Very good stuff. I have read some of the First of all, John Suntress from the Word Balloon podcast, one of the great pop culture podcasts. I recommend everybody check it out. And he's got a great channel. I have read those comics. I like them. I think the IDW Kelvinverse comics are way better than the Kelvinverse movies. Stubble McShave, all the way from Sweden, sends in a super chat and says,
Sweden.
"Greetings to the Duke of Dope Discourse and the Queen of Cool, who classes up the channel. By the way, this hiatus has saved me a lot of money." Because he sends me super chats. Well, I'm back, baby. I'm back. Let's see.
Thank you.
Dancing Dog sent in a tip and said, "Robert, so great to see you with your sister. Growing up in Boston, my family and I would always go to second-run theaters. My local theater was the National Theater in Boston's South End, which no longer exists. What was your theater growing up?" Well, you might know. I went to every theater in Seattle, but my go-to theaters were the John Dance in Bellevue. The UA 150 theater is my favorite movie theater of all time. There was the Coliseum, the Town, and the Music Box. Those were the theaters that I went to because they were all equipped. Well, the Coliseum was a little junky, but the other theaters were all 70 millimeter capable, and that's where I would go. Sadhu's Screening Room sent in a tip and said, "You should do more videos with your sister. Very fascinating story. Also, The Gentleman is wicked funny. I saw The Gentleman, and I loved The Gentleman. And one of the best black comedies I've seen since The Nice Guys. The Gentleman is, of course, Guy Ritchie's new movie. I really enjoyed it. Mark Andreyko did not, but I really enjoyed it." Austin Hernandez sent in a super chat and said, "You guys have me tearing up. Thank you for sharing this with us. So happy you guys found each other. Does your sister have kids?" Ooh. Do you have kids?
Yes, I do. I have one son.
And how old is he?
13 in April.
And what did he get to do the other day?
Ooh, well, he was very, very fortunately included on the set at Crisis
Medicine.
Crisis Medicine. Next, let's see. It was trauma.
Tactical Casualty Care.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
And what did he get to do?
And he got to be the marker man.
He was our slate monkey.
That's right, and he loved it. I loved it. I actually was following very closely on how to stop the bleeding and how to pack the wound.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I feel prepared. I have gauze in my car. I'm set.
Do you have combat gauze?
Ooh, I better get some.
It's expensive.
Is that on the market?
I think Mike could hook you up.
Okay, that's probably what I need.
Yeah, it is what you need. Everybody needs, by the way, Kaido gauze, everybody needs combat gauze. Everybody should get a Stop the Bleed kit. And you'd find out more if you go to Crisis Medicine and watch the show.
I recommend it. Everyone should know in case something happens.
Mike does not sponsor this channel. He sponsors me personally, but not this channel. But I will say this. At least the one-day Crisis Medicine course is worth the money. And Mike he's very entertaining. Excellent. He's very funny. He's got a very sardonic sense of humor, and he actually is great on camera, and he does a really, really good job. It's worth taking the class. And
it was a fabulous production. Everyone there was first rate.
Yeah.
So organized, and yeah.
It was awesome. If I do say so myself. And you'll see, I'll show you, after this, I'll show you.
Oh, lovely.
We actually, what we shot on Wednesday and Thursday, Lori and I, Mike's wife, we're sitting next to each other editing.
Oh, good.
Editing what we shot. So it's really neat. It's very slick. Kenneth 83DK sent in a super chat and says, I will never forget the joy I felt when 12-year-old me answered the door to meet a big sister I was never told about. So glad you found each other.
And I as well.
How about that?
Fantastic. Congratulations.
So Linda, what happened to Linda?
Well, so I went to see her, and this airport meeting was very different. And the person that came to greet me and pick me up was so different. I can't say completely different, but I knew that there was something not quite right, but she would never let on. She never let on. Everything was, I'm fine. And she wasn't fine.
She was very sick.
Lost a lot of body weight. She was very small. She was having a difficult time walking. I believe she had a cane.
Yeah.
And this is just 6 months after I'd last seen her. 6, maybe 7 at the most.
What exactly was wrong with her?
Well, she had ended up with 2 terminal diseases. One was an autoimmune disease called polymyositis, and the other was cirrhosis. And so,
of the liver?
Incidentally, right.
That's it. I'm not drinking anymore.
And
sort of.
She actually ended up with a doctor near her whose own mother had something very similar. So he was able to walk her through and really make her feel like she was getting the understanding.
Now, what is polymyositis? What is it?
Polymyositis.
Polymyositis. What is that exactly?
It's an autoimmune disease.
What is it?
And it begins to, cells begin to attack the body, and they began to attack the muscles. So her muscle tone and her muscles in her body began to disintegrate.
Right.
Or were attacked, and I'm not exactly how the chemical reactions occur, but she just kept losing weight and strength, and she went through many different treatments. She was flown out to Cedars-Sinai. Her gracious employer helped Kirk Kerkorian.
Kirk Kerkorian.
That she...
Now, I ask the question, are we predisposed to this autoimmune disease?
That's a great question. And
don't you know the answer?
I don't know that it is a genetic condition. So the cirrhosis, you're on your own.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I do believe that the things that we do and the things that we intake can contribute.
Echo through eternity.
Exactly. And so... Yeah.
So she passed away when she was 52.
And I'm 51.
And I'm 52.
So too soon. She was in and out of emergency care, ICU, 5 times during that time. I went out to... I just adored her and loved her and wanted to help her And when she was ill and in the hospital, I went out. I wanted to live there and care for her. And she would have none of it. She had me thrown out of the state, literally. Could not stay at her apartment. Could not. I went to her room, and I remember one of the executives from the hotel was there, who offered me to stay at the hotel as long as I needed, and she would not allow that. So I was there for a few days, and she just is. I understand this because I'm the same. Because I do not want someone to take their life and have to care for me. And I would never want that. So I understand completely how she felt. She didn't want to take my life for hers. See, I wanted that. I wanted to give everything and be there for her and do that. It would have been my honor. But she would have none of it. So I stayed a few days and went back to Hawaii, and then she was out of the hospital again and went back again, and this went on for a while.
I think I saw her one time when she was in the hospital, and she never wanted me to come see her again. And then I didn't see her I don't think I saw her for the last 6 months of her life. I mean, I don't remember. But my dad was similar to that as well. He was sick, but she didn't want us to. I think it all kind of, it was, I think for me at least, it was, I felt that the guilt that she felt sort of spilled over to how I think that she knew that she was going to die, and she thought she blamed herself for doing that to us again. Like, at least that's the impression that I got from her, is that we're not a part of her life. We found her, then we were a part of her life. And when I was in Vegas, I mean, she made sure everything was going at 110 miles an hour. Like, she was hooking us up. I mean, it was crazy. I would go there with Sean. I mean, we were out of control. And she liked that. I mean, she would, what do you want? Where do you want to stay? She would just get us unbelievable amounts of free. I paid for nothing. But it was her way of dealing with that. But what she never understood is I just liked hanging out with her.
Right.
She was cool. But I don't think she was, I don't know. There was a sadness to her that I think was there, that not necessarily about us, but just she was very active in Las Vegas has per capita a lot of abused children. So one of her she did anything she could to help kids out. And one of the things that we had done at Sci-Fi Universe magazine to celebrate the release of the Star Wars special editions, Mark Altman and I came up with the idea of having Sci-Fi Kids Day at the MGM Grand Hotel. So we were raising money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the Children's Cancer Society. And we had a day where we had some of the cast of Space Above and Beyond and Battlestar Galactica, Babylon 5. And we had celebrities come. We basically threw a science fiction convention outside in the amusement park at the MGM Grand with her help. Right. So we were able to do things. That was something that we did. And it was great because I could just call her up and go, hey, can we throw a charity event? Sci-Fi Universe charity event at the MGM Grand? And she's like, sure. I mean, it was great to have that kind of access. And we did. And it was because it was for kids. So anything that we wanted to do. Anything for kids. Right. That was her thing. So we did, I mean, I did get to do, it wasn't all just partying. I mean, we threw this event, and I think she was incredibly proud that we did that. And then we made Free Enterprise the next year. So she got to meet Mark and knew all of my crew of people. And that was a good thing to have, I think. Right. It was good. So looking back on this experience, you being an adoptee and finding your family, and you found we have other relatives. Many. That I haven't met.
Many. And the story continues to unfold and continue to unfold. So
yes. Well, tell them a little bit about that.
So much to that.
I mean, we have is it Cindy, who I've never met, who lives in Virginia?
Right. I've never met Cindy.
She kind of looks like us.
She does. And she has siblings that...
Yeah.
I think there's definitely...
She's a Facebook friend of mine.
So, yes, mine too.
And didn't her kids, or one of her kids, just get married or something? I think. Boyfriend.
I'm not exactly. Can't confirm that.
I can't either. But she likes my Instagram posts.
Right. And then there was the day not long ago, almost 2 years now, where there was the possibility of another sibling.
Oh yeah, whatever happened with that?
Turned out, so there were some 23andMe tests that were...
Yeah, for a while we thought we had a third.
It was a possibility.
A third sibling.
There was maybe a half sibling. We weren't certain.
Right.
So it turned out that we have a new cousin, Drea Ray.
That was Linda's brother.
Right.
That was his doing.
One of the three.
Yes,
so.
Yeah.
Johnny. So yes. And I've been in touch with some cousins on our father's sister's children. I've met all of them, although I never met our biological father. He passed away. We wrote back and forth. I am friends with some of his friends. I mean, this just goes on and on.
But wait a minute. He never knew he had 2 kids, though, did he? He thinks you're me.
No, he finally did.
Oh, he did?
Yes. So this would have been 98. And I end up, Marlene, maybe even sooner, Marlene, our friend, Marlene Smith, who began the adoption search, she forwarded some information that she had to me, and I wrote a letter, sent it to an address.
Wow.
And it was not his address. It was the address of his best friend. And that letter, too, got lost in the shuffle.
Oh.
And on my... I guess it would have been just shortly the same year. So on my 29th birthday, so I call over the day before my birthday to this phone number, and they find the letter. This person who answers finds the letter. The best friend gets on the phone, Patrick, the father.
Right.
And
Our
wants to know
biological
who
father.
I am. And so I said, well, do you remember a woman named Linda? And Linda Hendrickson. And he says, yes, oh, lovely Linda. And I said, well, I am their daughter of Patrick and Linda. So he calls Patrick, and Patrick comes down the very next day, which is my birthday. So he finds out about me from this letter on my 29th birthday.
Wow.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Amazing timing. Amazing.
I never met him. I would have given him a piece of my mind.
I'm sure of that.
I wouldn't have been a fan.
I
mean, I'm a fan that, he contributed to my existence. But 26 years old, going after 17-year-olds. I get it. It was the 60s. I know.
So I did also become friends with his mom.
Uh-oh. I don't mean any disparaging.
And his half-sister. And we're still... His mother has passed, but she and I visited several times while she was in town from Arizona. We met up in Seattle, which
so that'd be our grandmother.
Back to, right? And
Did you get retroactive birthday presents when you met her?
I wouldn't call it that, but she was very kind and very, very open, and said if she had known about us, or me specifically, she would have taken me in and cared for me, but she didn't know.
Right.
So
he didn't know.
He didn't. That's
no one
true.
knew.
How
She
could
kept it a secret.
right?
Nobody knew.
Very good. Very good.
No one knew. No one knew.
So there's just so many directions this whole thing goes, and it just goes on and on.
Well, ultimately, I mean, it's an interesting story. You hear more and more about it, because of our genetics. Mike, too. Dr. Schertz also adopted.
I just found that out, yes.
Yes, so I think Mike has come over here because he's cracking the whip on me.
Checking in.
Mike is checking in. Normally my shows go 2 hours, so we got, I've got a few more questions for you, but we will be wrapping up shortly, sir, because I will get back to work. I'm here to work. This is not a vacation for me. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, what would you tell people who might be in our situation? What would you say to people about looking for, if you're adopted, what advice can you offer? What are some things that you've learned? What are some insights that you might be able to provide for people that are looking for family? I mean, it's easier now because there's the internet, there's genetics, 23andMe or whatever, and
right.
There's a lot more ways than you had to deal with even 25 years ago. But what would you say in terms of even emotions?
Sure.
Like, what are the things that you expected? What did you hope to achieve? And did you achieve those things? And how do you feel now looking back on the whole experience?
Sure. Well, I've had a lot of time to think about that. And we almost ended up hosting a show about that, helping people find their loved ones.
We
and
did.
That's another story, which is completely amazing. But I think the most important thing that I've noticed is before you advance, to just keep in mind that everyone receives this differently. Everyone's having a very different experience. Every person is different. Some people are receptive to the idea, some are not. That doesn't mean that they get to tell you what is and isn't okay for you to do. And so you need to understand that as you navigate this, everyone will respond differently. And there are other people in their lives that are very involved. That this doesn't just affect you and them. It's a collection of people. It's your friends, your family, your history, their friends, their family, and their history, and what all of those people bring. So before you step ahead, and I always encourage people, I feel like the timing for us was spot on, and it just, so you don't get to always choose that. And you also don't get to choose how people receive it. You can't control that. You cannot control people's emotions or where they are, or even you don't know how you're going to respond. And you may not like what you find, and they may not like what they've found either.
Right.
So those are all things to keep in mind. It's just not about just you. It's extremely emotional. I've never walked through anything as emotional as meeting you and meeting Linda.
It was emotional. No, meeting you was emotional. And it was something that for me too, I didn't know, it was, you were showing me such emotion that it was hard, it was nice, but it was something I wasn't used to.
Right.
And that was something that you kind of have to learn to deal with. And I think that's why after we met, I was kind of distant.
Right. You are wondering how do we define this relationship? You don't know, how much of my mom are you? Are you my mother, my mom, my friend, my confidant? Right. No matter what was in your past, because as Robert was saying, my parents were always my parents. I wasn't looking for new or replacement. I was looking for just pieces of the puzzle that I didn't even know existed.
Right.
And you don't know what those pieces are going to be or how the picture looks at the end. But you just know that that's what you're curious. You want to find out. I was curious. I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And you don't, like I said, you have no idea till you get there. Until you're there, you have no idea how you're going to respond. It's an unknown. It's a variable. No,
you're absolutely right. It is a variable. It's a very interesting thing, but ultimately I think rewarding. At the end, I mean, I think I'm happy to have known Linda. But what's really strange too is, like, as somebody who loves stories and is always trying to find meaning, Linda had come to terms, or maybe never, because she would talk about how she thought about us on our birthdays, and it was something that was a part of her entire life. And for me, I guess it wasn't, like, I didn't think about it, but I did think about it after I had met her. And I was very aware of her experience about how, she had these two kids. She gave them up. By the way, we should say, our biological mother never had children of her own. She never had a family. And she never told her husband of 20 years that we existed, which I think is a damn shame, because she had so much love to give. And she was a very cool lady. And maybe, like you said, she was closed off, and maybe she was closed off because I've always felt she had this sense of guilt about all of it. And I think in meeting us, she felt also there was guilt about certain things after meeting us that she felt. And I've always sort of thought that maybe that's that sense of guilt was sort of contributed to her, certainly her cirrhosis. But
another thing, the what was really happening with her biologically and with her illnesses, she wasn't very forthcoming with that.
Right.
And I think she was very hopeful that was going to change, but at some point she kind of gave up that she was, when you continue to walk through that, I think that she, her life changed and her whole situation changed. So when those unexpected things happen.
Yes.
We don't get to control that. So.
Roberto Suarez, who I was out with last night, says, thanks for sharing your stories. Enjoy your last day in Portland. Now, I've got to go back because people have sent me in tips and super chats from days that I haven't kept up with.
Right.
Like this. Turd Burglar sent in a super chat. Turd Burglar said, I just subbed. I saw you on the Echo Base documentary. I was on Echo Base. They're part of the Fandom Menace. They did an interesting documentary on the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and they used some of this show in that. And Turd Burglar also sent in another super chat and says, definitely worth watching the documentary. They did a great job, and I loved your takes. Download it and watch it on the plane. Well, for those of you who don't know, the Echo Base Network did make a very cool documentary. I, along with a lot of other YouTubers, like Gary Beekler and John Campia. It's narrated by Doomcock, so check that out. Fabian sent in a tip. Willow Yang sent in a tip. Welcome back, Rob. It's actually my mom's 56th birthday today, February 1st. If I showed her a video of... Oh, wait a minute. If I showed her a video of you, I predict that she'd say... Who's the Lao To, the old man? And I'll say, you're older than him. Well, first of all, let me just say to Willow Yang's mom, Mrs. Yang, you have an incredible daughter, and she has enriched everybody as part of this community here on the Post-Geek Singularity, on Robservations, on the Burnettwork, and it wouldn't be the same place without her. So well done cooking up such a lovely young woman as Willow Yang, who I hope one day to meet in person. But I've come to know her and love her through her great work. So well done. And I guess I truly am, what is the word? Lao To? Thanks for that. Just remember, I want to know how to say old man with one foot in his grave. So Willow, tell me that. Actually, why don't you have your mom make her a video? I'll play it. Willow also sent in another tip saying, I hope I'm not being insensitive with my question, but did you always know that you were adopted? How did your parents reveal it to you? Well, I said early on, I always did know that I was adopted. I don't know if my parents ever, like they told me, I don't ever remember not knowing. Like I always knew I was adopted. Did you always know?
No.
Oh, you found when you were 6.
I was 6. About
you were
6 years old, yeah.
Yeah, because it played into my childhood fantasy. So you were 6. Yeah, I always knew. I always knew that I was adopted. And it was never a big deal to me. I think where it came into play mostly was with like religion. Because being raised in a Jewish family, and it was nice to find out Linda, she was a little Jewish. So that was pretty good. But yes, I got a lot of that. The Jewish religion, your lineage is important. So a lot of the time I was called the stealth Jew or the Aryan Jew, things like that growing up. But yeah, I always knew. And you found out when you were 6.
Right.
When you were 6 and found out, what did that mean to you? Like, do you remember when you were a kid?
Nothing.
It meant
nothing to me because my mother was my mom and my dad was my dad, and that was it. It just ended there. I just filed the information away. And I had, my mom's family was my grandparents were very present and very wonderful to our family. And so I spent so much time with them, and they're a very stable force in my life. Regardless of what was happening, they were always there for me. For us.
Sam O'Neill sent in a super chat saying, if you haven't already, have a look at the new Fast 9 poster with Han in it. Now, I'm going to talk about this just quickly. As everyone knows, I love the Fast and the Furious franchise. And I felt that when Deckard Shaw was introduced, when Jason Statham was introduced, and everyone knows about how the continuity of the Fast and Furious movies is so convoluted. When I found out that Jason Statham had killed Han Solo, who is my favorite character, I'm a huge fan of what I call the Drift, which is Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. I loved Han, played by the great Sun Kang. I have a man crush on him. And I've been talking, I would like to say that I was the first person to do that, to come up with a hashtag on Twitter, Justice for Han. Because when they made Jason Statham like a good guy, and I was incensed. They killed Han Solo, my favorite character in the franchise, and I've been saying for this for years now. And yesterday I called it. Did I not say they were bringing Han back? I would like to take all credit for Han coming back, and my hashtag. I believe I was the first person to use that hashtag on Twitter. I don't know. I've tried to go back to prove that I was, but just to say, and I'll go into this more probably tomorrow if I get home in time. I lost my shit yesterday when I watched I was sitting next to Lori and I had headphones on and I couldn't. We were editing, but I couldn't. I tried to explain to her, but I could not believe. I'd said on the John Campea show that Sun Kang was coming back. I'd said Han was going to come back, that he wasn't dead, that maybe it has something to do with Cypher or whatever. It was the most glorious moment when he shows up in the trailer. I am so very excited. You know, I used to tweet to Justin Lin, who used to be trailing Johnson on Twitter. He never tweeted me back. I tweeted at Sun Kang. One day I'll meet them. Hopefully somebody will send me premiere tickets, because nobody is more excited about the return of Sun Kang as Han Solo as I am. He's a great Korean. Perhaps North and South Korea should be reunited over the greatness of his return. That's what I think should happen. I have not seen the poster. I will look for it. So, Suthius sent in a tip, said, Mr. B, Friday was a day where the world was turned in shock, but with great relief. A day where the human race together stood upon the tallest mountaintop with fire behind our breath and roared into the vastness of the universe. Justice for Han. That's right, sir. I can't wait to go on the John Campea show on Monday to gloat. Because for 2 years we've been talking about Justice for Han, and of course John Campea was not on that tip. And I think I've got I think that was all the super chats and all the tips that I hadn't got to. So I think we're all caught up. I didn't say no. It's Han Solo. Seoul, like the city Seoul. That's his name. That's his name. Han Solo. Yes, it's a play on Star Wars, but that's his character's name. You can take it to the bank. I'm very, very excited. Well, sis, now that you're here, what was your experience? What would you say about our community of imagination connoisseurs out there? Everybody watching, they're imagination connoisseurs. They're part of the Post-Geek Singularity community. What would you?
I love that.
Do you have any words of advice?
First, thank you very much, everyone who sent in questions and comments. And it's great to be here with you. Thank you for having me on your show. It was a byproduct of coming to Portland.
I figured you're here. Why not have you on? And you didn't have to do this.
And thanks to the shirts.
The shirts, yes.
For hosting this today. Absolutely.
Thank you for the mimosa.
And continue. Soldier on, imagination connoisseurs.
Yes.
Because we need more connoisseurs. Curate. Bring it in.
Now, wait a minute. Let's talk about Star Wars for a minute.
I'd love to. In fact, I wanted to bring that up. I was thinking back in 1978 when I was downtown. Where did Star Wars run the longest?
UA 150.
Well, of
on
course.
6th and Blanchard, downtown Seattle.
And I just imagined that you and I were probably, you saw it there.
Oh, I saw The Empire Strikes Back there 26 times, but I saw Star Wars there about 11.
I just imagined that we probably sat near one another.
Okay, but that's not what I want to talk about.
So we grew up. Remember, I said I had this nanny.
She's trying to. I want to know.
So we had this nanny.
She has a 12-year-old son.
Moved in when I was 3 years
Zach,
old.
who's a great kid.
A couple years later.
Has Zach seen Star Wars yet?
And then.
Has he?
Sorry. We
Has
have
Zach seen Star Trek yet?
Of our own. We're very happy with it, and I'm letting him make all those decisions himself because I believe in making your own choices. I influence him to my understanding of goodness, great things. But I don't leave that just up to me. How can one know what goodness really is?
Oh no, here it comes.
How can one know? So I have to defer to something higher than myself. And what Zach does, I know he's so interested in film. I see some very
he was very interested in film, but
very, very much.
He's never seen Star Trek, and he's never seen Star Wars.
And when he's a little bit older, he has seen some Star Trek. He loves the Gorn.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
But no Star Wars.
And of course, I haven't shown. He's not allowed to watch inferior, not really Star.
You don't even have to say it.
So,
as long as
right?
yes, that's good. All he has to know is the
Speaking
Gorn.
of loyalty and wisdom and all of those things. So he'll make those decisions when the time comes.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, imagination connoisseurs, I have to say, as you all know, every person you meet, and you got to meet a new person today, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. I want to thank everybody for watching the show. I want to thank everybody for contributing and supporting the channel. I also want to thank my great moderators. Of course, there's the great Mike Bodden. There's Detective Jim Boyers. There's great Greg Smith. There's Lewis Yu. And, of course, there's Geordie Lyons. Geordie Lyons, I think, is in the UK, which is no longer part of the European Union. I don't know how that's going to go. We live in interesting times, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Robservations is back. I don't know if I will be on tomorrow because it depends on my flight schedule. I think I can do a show. But there is the Super Bowl. It is on tomorrow. And, I guess I have to root for the 49ers to win. But I'd really like to see Kansas City. You can't be a Seahawks fan and ever root for the 49ers, ever. But, they are West Coast. But I've always wanted to go to Kansas City. So I think I might be rooting for Kansas City. I think I'd like to see them win tomorrow. But Robservations is back. I'll be on the John Campea show on Monday discussing my great victory, the return of Han Solo to the Fast and the Furious franchise. And I will end this show, as I always end it, by saying, well, first of all, I want to thank you.
And thank you.
And I want to thank Mike Schertz, Dr. Mike Schertz. And I think everyone go check out Crisis Medicine, Tactical Casualty Care. There is a website. If you punch in Crisis Medicine in Google, it'll take you right there. I want to thank Mike for employing me and for being a friend for many, many decades, and his wife and lovely daughter for hosting me, and his dog Aaliyah for pinch hitting for Gilbert and Tallulah, and who will be back. I miss them terribly. So with that, I will say, everyone. Garen Gillum sent in. He says, "Welcome back, Rob." Well, Garen, thank you for that. I will be back, and it's good to be back. And I'm tired of traveling. I love traveling, but I've been to New York, I've been to Portland. I need to stay home for a while. So thank you very much, and we'll be back to the normal format of the show. I haven't even looked at letters, but send them in. I missed a Willow Yang letter. I saw she wrote a letter about Barkley that was on. I had to see it on the website. I'm going to read that. I hope I hear back about Willow's mom sending a video. But anyway, as I always say, have a better day, and I'll see you tomorrow.